Don't mind me, I'm just cleaning up for my other giant disaster video. Oh my god. Anyway, hello, and welcome back, because today I really want to talk to you guys about something maybe that you haven't thought about that you could, and that's especially if you're looking to get into some ancestor work. But that is using food as a means to connect with your ancestors. Now, last time we had a little chat together, I talked to you about cookbooks, right? And I showed you a couple that have to do with me specifically culturally, and that was my Kochen wie Kärnten, right? My Austrian one, and also my Cook Eat Slovenia, which was a more Slovenia-based one. And in these, right, there are a lot of foods that my ancestors, as an abstract concept, right, as people I've never met who were over there on European soil, have eaten. I mean, even less abstractly, there were a lot of foods in there that my mom ate growing up. Ones that she really liked, like goulash, and then ones that she really hated, like shgansi, which is literally just boiled wheat flour. Actually, no, I'm sorry, boiled buckwheat flour. Literally, shgansi is the weirdest thing. Boiled buckwheat flour, you boil it until it makes these crumbles, and then you put maybe some like cracklings or pork fat on it, and that's it. Hey, Slovenia! But still, right? So these are foods that are having to do with my roots and my ancestry, and they help me feel more connected to my identity as a Slovenian, and, you know, as specifically a northern Slovenian up there near Kärnten, near Krain, as we would say, right? Carniola, Carinthia, all that kind of stuff. But if I were to talk about connecting with my specific ancestors that I grew up with, that I loved very much, that I still love even now that they have passed, the foods that I would be putting down would not look like the foods in that cookbook. As much as I do consider it a continuation of tradition to make walnut patitsa for every Christmas and Easter, and as much as, you know, I do want to get more into other traditions like the Lenten krofet donuts and all these other things, my Oma was someone who every time she came to America, my mom had to stock up on two things she never had in the house, and that was those Little Debbie Nutty Bars and Coca-Cola. For some reason, my Oma loved these things, and they were the only time they were ever in the house, and my mom had to hide them from my dad and I, because we would just eat every single one on my poor Oma, and she would have none. But still, right? I've seen many different practitioners, especially ones who do ancestor work and connect with their immediate family that have passed, right? Grandparents and aunts and uncles and all that stuff. They do so by using food, specifically food as an offering. And especially in the more folk Catholic traditions, this is really big. So for my mom and I, right, we grew up Catholic, she raised me Catholic, but like a chill Catholic, like a European Slovenian Catholic, where like people aren't completely insane. So, you know, the whole thing that people are doing now with like pretending to be Catholic, but it's really just like hardcore evangelism with a nice veil. No, none of that. What there was, though, was a lot of this idea that you should light a candle for your ancestors, right? So every time, like a birthday of my opa went by, or the birthday of a friend that had passed went by, or something like that, my mom lights a candle. Likewise, on the day that they died, she would light a candle, right? So all that kind of stuff, and she's always going to the churches, lighting candles to pray for both living and dead, all that kind of stuff. This is a form of ancestor veneration that has continued to exist in Christianity. And so, well, when it comes to Catholic ancestor veneration and stuff like that, we can think of food, and that namely comes in like the dumb suppers that have, you know, continued from like Celtic polytheism, from the, you know, ofrendas of Dia de los Muertos, right, where mostly Catholic communities are still putting out their favorite snacks of people that have passed and everything like that. That's one place where food pops up, but it seems to be really the only place, right? At least according to the official religion. The truth is, though, I've seen, again, many folk Catholic practitioners who absolutely took note of their ancestors' favorite snacks. Maybe Fig Newtons and coffee, maybe Nutty Bars and Coca-Cola, maybe anything like that, and they use that on the altar of their ancestors. And in doing so, they create a space for their ancestors to come by, literally as a visitor would, stop by for tea, for coffee, whatever, and just chat. And I think that is a beautiful thing, and I think that's something that exists not just in, like, obviously extremely old school Catholicism, but also out in the world, out, you know, in many different polytheistic and pagan cultures, and many other spots, right? This idea that the dead are looking for something to eat to, you know, gain some energy, or to, you know, root themselves there, to talk with their loved ones after passing. There's a lot of traditions that have stuff like that going on. And so I just wanted to talk to you all who may be considering ancestor work about how you might go about using food, right? Because ancestor work does not have to be expensive, it does not have to be weird, it does not have to be like complex or anything. It literally can just be like, light a candle, put down some food, and get to chatting. But there are other ways too. So first let's talk about it. So first let's talk about the one that I already put forward, which is find your ancestors' favorite foods. If you don't know your ancestors' favorite foods, your grandparents or anything like that, I recommend honestly like asking your parents, what did they eat a lot? What did they really like, right? Like, I know that my grandma really liked those, she really liked sourdough pretzels, right? She really liked sourdough pretzels and, you know, a few other things. My grandfather, I can't say there was anything specifically I ever remember him eating. They had coffee ice cream a lot though. So coffee ice cream, sourdough pretzel bites, those are the Oreos, those are the kind of things they always had in the house. Whether for the kids or for themselves, I don't know. But that was that, right? And then on my Oma's side, Jesus, she loved those fruit gummies, those little, like, kind of circular, sugar-crusted fruit gummies, and then the nutty bars and the Coca-Cola. Loved those things. So if I had to, you know, think about something that I would put on an altar for them, it would definitely be little things like that. It wouldn't necessarily be things that I cooked unless it was for a very special occasion, right? Because for that everyday ancestor worship, you're not trying to be a kitchen witch out there cooking elaborate, you know, old school meals all the time. As we know, old school meals tend to take longer because there was a time where people were in the house all the time, cooking and cleaning and doing everything else. But no, nowadays, right, we have those little things we can buy. So if you would think about like sacrifices that get expensive, I mean, it doesn't have to be the case here, right? Here it's just like my mom would do when she knew Oma was coming. She would stock up on Oma's favorite treats, and there you go. So if I had an altar to my Oma, it would be, you know, a picture, a candle, a cup, like a small cup of Coca-Cola, and some nutty bars. Why not? Why not, right? That's as simple as a small altar to an ancestor has to be. That's all it has to be. However, if you wanted to go a step further, yeah, I mean, you could definitely make a ritual out of cooking. For instance, my mom says my Opa was a fantastic cook and made the best, like, roasted duck and other things like that. Maybe if I really wanted to try connecting with my Opa, I would try to recreate his meals, right? I would try to cook things like he cooked them. And the whole time I would be thinking about him, right? I would be thinking about him, maybe talking to him, maybe even inviting him in over a cup of coffee and asking him steps of like how I should be doing stuff, you know, getting those more intuitive details about how I needed to cook this or do that, especially if it's a recipe I couldn't find, right? There are little things like that where it's like your mom's chicken soup or your great aunt's you know, peanut brittle. My grandma's peanut brittle, hell, it was good. It was good. So think about that. Think about also cooking as a bonding activity with ancestors. Food as a bonding activity, not just as an offering. You can do that as well. Because, right, when we look at recipes in books, and when I look at recipes in the cookbooks that I showed you, there's just something about the cookbook version of an ancestral cultural food, a lot of times that when it's made for a larger audience, especially an English-speaking audience like Cook Eat Slovenia, right? There's something sanitized about it. There's something that's not quite correct. I remember looking at, you know, some of the recipes for stuffed peppers and stuffed cabbage and whatever else in that book, and I was like, there's like no seasonings in the sauce, right? Like there's nothing really here. It's just a basic tomato sauce. There's nothing really in it. I had to call up my aunt on Facebook Messenger and be like, Auntie, how do I do this, right? Like, what do you do to make an actually Slovenian tasting tomato sauce? And she told me, and I had to go scribble it down in that book, right? Just like the old cookbooks of yore. Here's my own notes in the margins about what needs to actually be done. And so suddenly, once I started doing what my aunt said, on top of the steps in that cookbook, my stuffed peppers went from being like basic to being good, like good, right? So that's one of those things. Maybe you can kind of use that as a spiritual bonding time and see if you can speak to your ancestors, intuit some of their steps, see if you can feel them saying, like, you know, more of this or less of that, or, you know, look over here, look at this, this is burning, right? Like, invite them in your space. Let them help you. That's something that could be potentially really, really fun or really, really frustrating depending on how your ancestors were. Oh god, I know that my Oma taught my mom how to make patitsa. and every year just came out like a rock. I don't know what happened. That time we had to find different recipes. It's one of those things where maybe talking to your ancestors and asking them for help would be really, really frustrating, because your ancestors also did not have that good of a recipe, maybe? Or at least a recipe that got mixed up and lost in translation somewhere along the way. But it could still be fun, right? It could still be a lot of fun. And I feel like maybe another way of using food, and probably the last one that I could mention right now, is think about what kind of foods maybe they really liked but didn't have a lot of access to. So, for example, when my mom was growing up in Europe, like, and I'm talking way back, I'm talking like when she was very, very young and they were in Slovenia, meat was not an everyday thing. Like, we are in a crazy place where we can have meat every day in this country, because in my mom's time, and especially my aunt's time, no, they were so very, very, very not well off, right? And I mean, of course, because they were farmers in rural Slovenia in when it was still Yugoslavia, right? So this time there wasn't a lot of money to go around, and meat became a very special thing. It was like a special time treat. So maybe you could make something a little bit more fancy and set some aside specifically for your ancestors as like a tribute, as like a, hey, here you go, you know, have this because I know that you liked this but didn't get to eat it a lot, right? You could also, I mean, when we went out to eat, or like we got pizza or something, my Oma always wanted a bucket of French fries. Didn't matter what the hell we were getting. Didn't matter if we were getting Chinese. Didn't matter if we were getting pizza. Didn't matter what we were getting. Oma wanted French fries. So, also, right, like if you're not cooking, then if you're going out, maybe knowing what they would order or something like that, that's another thing, right? You can order it for yourself and like kind of leave a piece for them, or like set aside some for them, or take some home, or you could just kind of like offer it up and then enjoy it with them, I guess, in a sense. And that way it's kind of like sharing that thing that like, hey, look, we have things that we didn't have access to before, share them with me now, right? So there's a lot of sentimental stuff, there's a lot of history that goes into food. But I think that if you wanted to connect to your ancestors better, for whatever reason I'm thinking of ancestor work this week, Kitchen Witchcraft is a great place to do so, because we connect to communities through food. We connect to our families through food, right? All those recipes passed down through the ages. We connect this way through and around food. So think about it. And if there is any ancestor you want to work with, think about what they would have liked. And if you really can't find out from like family members or so on, if you're not in contact with your other family and you don't want to ask them, a little divination never hurt, right? A little divination never hurt. A little inviting them over with a picture of them or something and asking them directly, that's still an option. So in the wake of our larger videos this week, I just wanted to put this out there as well as like a more grounded kind of thing to think about, a nice thing to think about when we think about ancestors and history and culture and perseverance and resilience. This is a way I think we could go about it. So I hope that is just a helpful little thing to think about, and I'll see you guys next time for some more Kitchen Witch discussions. See ya!